Howdy, folks. It's Cyber Monday today. I don't know what the hell that means, but
You could shop and talk to us at the same time.
yeah, well, and
Watch us.
I very few things I have bought online. I'm not a Neanderthal. I'm not afraid of it anymore, but it's just, I just, I want, if I'm going to buy something, I want it in my hands that second. I want to go someplace and get it, and then I have it. And
It
now,
depends. Sometimes I'll get a deal and I'll buy it online. I would say I probably do 55 to 60% of our shopping online.
yeah, I know you can save a lot.
Yeah.
But there's like, okay, do I really want to wait 3 days, then find out that they've either sent me the wrong thing or sent me something that's broken? Or I bought like CD box sets and gotten it, and it's got a nice big scratch down the, and then it's.
That does happen, but it doesn't happen that much. I mean, I have to say most of the things come in really good shape, and that really, I can only think of a few times where that's happened to me. So I think you are a Neanderthal, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, so I'm really promoting Cyber Monday with all my idiosyncrasies and fears, but go ahead, Rob.
So there's a couple things. First one, Major League Baseball is trying to avert a strike tonight, I think at midnight, and right now that's that's a problem.
Tenuous.
It's very tenuous. It looked like everything was all sewn up a few weeks ago, and then all of a sudden money gets involved.
Yeah, well, when all of a sudden Major League Baseball became hockey again, it's like, did Donald Fair get hired by MLB's players?
No, but you got to remember, Major League Baseball has had its fair share of strikes. They've had a lot of them.
Yeah, but like recently,
like in our lifetime, they have.
Sure, I remember '94. I remember.
Oh, that goes back to '81.
Yes, but the thing is like, over like the last decade, there's been relative labor peace, and people were getting used to the fact. But now I guess with I think it's Tony Clark is now the head of the players, and we have the new commissioner after Selig is retired, and I guess they're trying to sort of like stand on principle.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I mean, it's not going to matter much in terms of the games. It's going to matter in terms of contracts, because there's a lot of players out there, like for the Blue Jays, Edwin Encarnacion and Batista are unsigned. They're free agents. Or Aroldis Chapman. All these guys are unsigned, and they're going to be in limbo until a new collective bargaining agreement is reached.
Yeah, it's really it'll be interesting. It really will be interesting, because it looked like it was a done deal. Now it's not. And so, like, for all the people that complain about hockey, baseball could be headed down that path. A secondary thing is, and this will lead into the NHL coaching. When you talk about coaching, I know that they tend to get blamed first before the players and before everything, and there's a reason why. So, like, if you watched the New York Jets game, I was following it, watching it. I didn't watch every second. There's a lot of coaching decisions that went on in that game that helped the loss. And after the game, normally a guy who I despise, Tom Brady, actually was very helpful to New York Jets fans, because he pointed out that he noticed Darrelle Revis was injured. And he said, because he was a teammate, he goes, look, I saw him wincing a couple times, and I saw he was having trouble out there. Well, the Jets left him out there. He got burnt for 2 touchdowns, and he got burnt for the final touchdown. And when you see something like that happen, if Tom Brady notices it, the Jets coaching staff is not fooling anybody. There has to be a better option or a better defensive set that you can do so he doesn't get picked on out there when he's injured. And so I wrote an article about it on Sportsology. People could check it out. It's pretty layered as far as draft and what's wrong with this team. But that's a coaching thing where, they do have good players. But
I noticed one thing. I know there was a great hue and cry on New York radio and, the shows that are on the Yes Network, like the Michael Kay show and Francesa, talking about the decision to start Fitzpatrick, even though they're out of it. Right. And they have 2 young quarterbacks. This is like a team that's, in a way, refusing to tank. But, maybe it's the fact that they know they're going to lose with Fitzpatrick at quarterback, and they are tanking. Why would you keep Darrelle Revis out there unless you maybe we're tanking.
I mean, I guess that's a possibility, but they're certainly not acting like that. And so it gives us mixed signals to Jet fans who are pretty fed up at this point, because there isn't any great – really, there's no great solution at quarterback. Bryce Petty's the guy. He's the next guy in line. Fitzpatrick shouldn't be playing anymore. But, like I said, read the article. I cover all that. It's just – but, so we go from that coaching to the NHL. So, you were the first one that notified me that Gerard Gallant had lost his job yesterday. And of all the coaches, we talked about, we never mentioned him because, you figured he was pretty safe after the year he had last year.
Yeah, for those watching, first of all, let's just do the intro.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, November 28th, 2016.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. As Russ mentioned, the news of the weekend happened Sunday night. I was doing my usual Sunday night writing at a local cafe and flipping through Twitter on a break, and all of a sudden it came up. Gerard Gallant has been relieved of his duties by the Florida Panthers. We said Lindy Ruff. We said Willie Desjardins. We said Jack Capuano. Nowhere did it come up that Gallant was a serious potential casualty this early in the season. But Russ, I'll give my opinion on this after I get your response, but in the aftermath of it, maybe we just overlooked it because it just seems that in the aftermath, they weren't on the same page at all.
Yeah, it does seem like that. I don't know if that was for the entire season. It might have just been recently with the recent losses and piling up. But the thing is, the one thing we talked about preseason, and honestly, I can't remember if I picked them for the playoffs or not. I think I did, but I wasn't as rosy on them as I was late in the season last year. And one of the things I mentioned was the fact that they changed over so many defensemen.
Right.
You could argue whether Gabranson was a help or not. You could argue, but it doesn't matter. They changed a lot of spots. And the good teams in the NHL rely on a core that is familiar with each other. They don't have that. They've been making moves. They even brought in Dylan McIlrath, if you remember, like all these moves, and they haven't worked out. And so Gerard Gallant is sort of taking the hit for this when his frustration, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing his frustration was probably the fact that he knew what he had in his team last year, and had they done very little to it or nothing at all, they'd probably be in a much better position. But they tinkered. It's a funny thing. Here's how it works in the NHL. If you want to be a perennial team, you can't tinker with something as important as defense that much. A player or two out of 6 is more than you want to tinker. Anything else that you're sort of changing around and you're really changing the dynamic of a team, and it's going to take longer to see what kind of team they're going to be. Where we are in the season now is not a real fair estimate for what Gallant could do with this team. And I'm not going to say anything about injuries because Huberdeau's out, but whatever. Bukestad just got back. But I think they should still have enough offense. But again, Yager's a year older. All these different things come into play, and they had an ownership that's pushing to make it to the Stanley Cup. And the pressure of that is what's making Tom Rowe do these things. And we'll see if it works out.
Well, and I mean, Elliot Friedman on Sportsnet wrote something right after the firing and talked about it early this afternoon on the Hockey Central show on Sportsnet. Apparently, Gallant and management were not on the same page. He hated the Eric Gabranson deal, which, that was a deal when it happened that friends of mine that I know that are of the analytics crowd were jumping for joy and saying that whoever made that deal for Florida was a genius, and that Jim Benning was a complete moron. To your point, they've changed not a couple defensemen, they've changed 4 defensemen. Kulikov out, Campbell, Willie Mitchell. They bring in Yandel, Demers, Pizik. Matheson only played a few games last year. So, I mean, there was a wholesale changeover on the blue line. But from what the indications are, I mean, this was them waiting for the right excuse to fire Gallant because Gallant was not on the same page as management in terms of buying into analytics. I know that Friedman mentioned, they were playing Seth Griffith, who they just picked up off of waivers from Toronto on the fourth line, and they want to see if Griffith can be a better player at a higher level. And there was maybe a little resistance on the part of Gallant. And Gallant didn't like the Logan Shaw for Michael Scarboza deal. Like all these little things piled up. But if you look at it, I mean, Huberdeau is out. Barkov had a bad start. The defense is not settling in. And if you look at it, Gallant is failing with their players, with the players that the management chose. So maybe it's better off for him to get out, but the dysfunction that was in that organization that started with the marginalization of Dale Talon as general manager is just continuing.
Well, and Scott Luce was let go before that, and that's a key guy who made a lot of great draft picks. The one thing you can't really ascertain from these reports, but I'm assuming if he was around, we would know about it. It doesn't seem like Tom Rowe was at this game. Yeah. And that's why we have pictures of Gallant in the cab, on the loading dock. It's a messy situation, but like all firings are a messy situation. So if the GM's there, the GM would have had a press conference, right? I'm sure of it.
Right, and I'm not going to destroy Florida over that, but the optics are that, and there was a sort of a blow-by-blow of what happened. A couple of the Florida reporters were not there. It was a game, it was a Sunday night game in Raleigh, and the news, how it got out to the Carolina reporters, and they immediately, I guess, rushed to the gate where a couple people were waiting for a taxi, and it turned out to be Gallant and his assistant coach, Mike Kelly. So They didn't even take him on the bus. They didn't even take him to the airport where they were going. They were completely separated. I mean, the optics of that are just embarrassing and bad. But that being said, I just think the whole situation and the way, Gallant got them, I think it was 47 wins last year. They made the first round of the playoffs. They were going in the right direction. And I said over the weekend, the Florida Panthers are doing their utmost to undo the progress that they have had over the last few years with the way that they're doing things.
Yeah, and they're not intentionally trying that, but so far that's what's happening.
The College Football Playoff Selection Committee will announce its 5th ranking of the season.
Thank you very much.
Website trying to get its way in the show. But, back in the day for the Mets, Omar Minaya once flew to the West Coast to fire Willie Randolph, did it at midnight Pacific time, and then put out an email at 3 a.m. Those optics weren't good either. That's what I'm saying. It's messy. I've been around a few of these. It's messy. There's nothing way around it, so I'm not going to kill Florida for it. We'll see how it works out. But right now, it's a big task. Like this is, and now you kind of wonder, because Rowe isn't like a regular GM with a ton of GM experience. If this doesn't work out for him, bringing the team into the playoffs, what is that going to mean for his future as the coach and or GM and or anything? And so he's got a lot on the line. I remember, with the Rangers, I was covering them, and Glenn Sater was the GM, and he took over behind the bench and said, we're going to make the playoffs, and they didn't. And that was during their long playoff drought. And so it's a hard situation to do that when you're a GM, take over as coach, and guide your team to the playoffs. That is a very hard thing to do.
Yeah, and from the reports this morning, Rowe is going to be the interim coach for the remainder of the season. And currently Florida is just outside of the wild card, 23 points, 11-10-1. The game last night, they were up 2 goals, and Carolina came back to win 3-2. So, it was the perfect opportunity for them to fire Gallant. If that was sort of in their quiver in terms of an arrow that they were going to shoot, then that was the perfect opportunity. But now, we're 1 quarter into the season. Most of their players have underachieved at this point. I know Yandel's only got, I believe, 1 goal. Barkov had a 14 or 15 game goalless streak. So, if they turn it around, then, things will look up for them. But from all reports and all indications, the players did not like this, and a lot of people in the league did not like this. But now the question is Gallant, he was in year 1 of a 3-year extension, whether he's going to be unemployed for long. Will he now be a replacement for those other positions that we thought were going to be, possible opportunities?
Or maybe George McPhee will call him for Vegas.
It's possible.
Yeah. So
Luce is there in Vegas, isn't he? I think so.
yeah, but he hasn't gotten interviewed for any kind of head coaching job. So
no, but
oh, you mean just because of the association? Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we'll see how that works out. I think he's going to get a job pretty quickly. It'll be up to Florida whether they allow it, right? I mean, that's because he is under contract.
No, I mean, I would think that they would, simply because there is no compensation anymore, and him getting another job someplace would alleviate them of the responsibility of having to pay him.
Right.
So if you can get it off the books, why not?
Yeah, I think you're right.
News that just came out just before the show, which is big news for Buffalo Sabres fans potentially. Jack Eichel, who started skating on the weekend with the team in practice, may make his season debut on Tuesday night. The Sabres right now are near the bottom of the Eastern Conference at 7-9-5, 19 points, a few points ahead of the New York Islanders.
So they didn't go 500, and they didn't manage to hold the ship while Jack was gone.
But to Buffalo's defense, it wasn't just Eichel.
I know, but this is every team, right? All teams have to face this, and it's just one of those things where with the Sabres, they still have to get stronger defensively. They still have to figure out who their goalie is. They, now Nielsen's been playing a lot, right? I mean, it's just who's the goalie there? I mean, they can't keep having these seasons where you don't know who the number one goalie is.
I think the goalie is Leonard, but Nielsen had a couple really good games, and I think it was one of those. The thing is, it's the backup always seems to stand out the last couple of years. A few years ago, Jonas Enroth played really well. Last year, Chad Johnson played better than a young kid in Linus Ullmark, even though Ullmark didn't play badly. But Chad Johnson had a few games where he was stupendous.
Yeah.
And that got him a free agent contract with Calgary. And now Nielsen, who they get from, I think it was Edmonton, they used to be in St. Louis.
Yeah.
He's had a couple games where he's really played very well and earned them points. So I think they just gave him a few more games because he deserved it. But I still think that Leonard is the guy.
Okay. It does show the immense importance that Eichel has for this. This team is so reliant on him. So that's a big deal. But also, Vander Kane's got 2 points. That's it.
Yeah, and there seems to be no shortage of rumors, even though he came out last week and said, "I really love it in Buffalo." Well, that's one side of the story.
Right. I mean, look, and they'll probably pair him right up with Eichel because they're going to want to get him going so they can trade him, because they're definitely going to trade him.
Yeah, last year for when they were healthy, the line that they had put together that was effective at sometimes was Kane, Eichel, and Reinhart. They had moved Reinhart to the right side. I know that they had played Reinhart up the middle, but he played center. He played center in junior, but he may not have the size and the strength to play up the middle in the NHL. He may benefit from being on the wall.
Yeah.
So, but if they get it, and they have O'Reilly back, if they get Eichel back, and Eichel is 100%. I mean, the one thing that's scary here, and as you know, when it comes to high ankle sprains, and it's been 6 weeks. He was hurt middle of October, just before the beginning of the regular season.
Right.
High ankle sprain is something that is easily re-injurable.
Yep.
When it comes to a hockey player, those muscles are the ones that you use to turn. They're used every game. Every stride. And if he's not 100%, he goes out there and he pulls a muscle again, or he re-injures it. That's another 6 weeks. So they better make sure that he's ready to go 100%.
Yeah, this is a tough point. This is a salient point in the Sabres season. It's either going to go up or it's going to continue to trend downward. I mean, that's really the way I see it.
Don't want to delve too much into the rumor area, but I wrote about it yesterday, and it was curious information. And I always love as somebody who's been a hockey fan and somebody who's written about the game for years, I always love trying to figure out what's going on behind the scenes. Sometimes scouts being at games mean nothing. Sometimes there is a connection to something potentially happening. And what I'm talking about here is on Saturday, I was up in Toronto covering the Toronto Marlies Utica game, and the roster for the Leafs Capitals game in the press box was available. And on that list was Brad Treliving, the Calgary general manager. Now, Treliving came last year in November, along with Brian Burke, who lives part-time in Toronto, and they were scouting Jonathan Bernier, and it was admitted that they were scouting Bernier. So when Treliving is at a game, you can rest assured that he's not there to eat the popcorn, that he's there to check on somebody. Doesn't mean that there's something imminent, but it's conspicuous by him being there that something might be going on.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean,
but fast forward to yesterday, and you pointed this out. Dave Morrison, who's the director of pro scouting for the Maple Leafs, was at the Calgary-Philadelphia game. That plus Treliving being in Toronto, in my mind, means something is afoot. Now, I don't know, and I said this clearly, there's a lot of rumors about Dougie Hamilton. I think the Leafs would be very interested in Dougie Hamilton. He's from the Toronto area. He's 23 years old. He's locked up for 4 more years after this year at $5.75 million. He's a big right-hand shot defenseman, more of an offensive guy than a shutdown guy. The Leafs supposedly are looking for a shutdown defenseman, but I think they would be interested in Hamilton. The question is what they would have to give up, and it would probably have to be a ton.
Yeah, I think it's going to be too much. I was thinking about it yesterday in my head, and again, the Flames are bad. They are just really bad again.
Well, you saw them yesterday. How bad were they?
The second period was the worst period of hockey that they had, but for any team that I saw going into Philly this year live, the worst. And I couldn't find anybody to disagree with me. It was the Flyers played almost a complete period in their end. It was just like a situation where even the Flames, even when they could have had a 3-on-2, they sort of passed on the situation just to dump the puck in the other end and it's
change and get it.
Yeah. And just, when you get in that mindset, it's bad. Now, they scored 2 shorthanded goals, and some will say that's a function of Anthony Stolarz, rookie goalie, although he got his first win. He's the first goalie from New Jersey to play in a game, win in a game. That's kind of cool. I thought Stolarz was fine. But, again, I will take some fans to task, too. If people see the goal that TJ Brody had, some people were calling that a soft goal. Like, that is not a soft goal. For one thing, he's coming down, beating 2 defensemen down the wing where the Flyers had 4 guys pinned in the corner on the power play, which is ridiculous to do. Calgary does that. Brody comes in. He goes on his backhand. He has, literally this much room, very little room to shoot on the net, and he made it. Now, it hit off Stolar's blocker, but you know what? That's only because he just ticked it, because it was so hard for him. He got over and covered the area. So I don't blame Stolarz on that at all. But, of course, some fans or a lot of fans did. But it doesn't matter. He had a good game. A couple goals, sure. Maybe he'd like to have back, but he's a rookie goalie. I'm not going to rip him. But Calgary's in trouble. Calgary, and I think the funny thing is, I guess that was Brody's first goal in 29 games. So some people, on the Philly side, felt like, oh, that's a horrible goal because Brody's not even scoring. And it's like, listen, this guy's a good player. This team has problems. This team, when you're playing a certain brand of hockey like they were playing yesterday, you don't get that many offensive chances. They get shots on goal. There'll be times where they got a few shots, 1 shot, 2 shots, they lose the puck, they come back 5 minutes later, 1 shot, 2 shot. So, they had that probably 27 shots, but they weren't all quality. They had maybe 10 quality shots the whole game. They need some offense. Now, I still don't think they'll trade Hamilton because I don't think they're deep enough on defense. I don't. I was bringing up with you, I said, hey, what's going on with Josh Levo? Because he seems like a player that could fit in there, hasn't gotten his chance offensively, does have some skills, does have skating ability, just hasn't been able to crack the Leafs lineup. And you told me he's like not an injury non-roster player.
Yeah, he's still in limbo. Basically, they don't want to put him on waivers so they'll lose him, and they still have this out where he was injured in training camp. They don't think he's 100%. They sent him down for a conditioning stint. They still didn't think he was ready, so he's on this non-roster injury list that prevents him from having to go on waivers.
Which means they could deal him.
Yes, which and the name also that was out there in terms of them potentially dealing him as Peter Holland, who was a late addition to the lineup on Saturday after William Nylander was scratched due to a mysterious upper body injury. And the funny thing was Nylander was at the morning skate, didn't appear to be a problem, and then he didn't skate in the pregame and then didn't play in the game. And they really didn't seem to skip a beat without Nylander in the lineup. But I mean, just looking at the situation, it could be a guy like Holland. It could be a Levo, who was a Brian Burke draft pick in Toronto when Burke was the GM. But maybe it's simply the Leafs are trying to alleviate their roster crunch.
Well, yeah, I looked at Brett Kulak yesterday, and so he's a guy they drafted Calgary in the 4th round in 2012. 6'2", he's probably like 190-something pounds. He, of the few defensemen on that team, is actually a plus. He's a +1 on the year. He's only got 3 points, 10 PIMs, but he is the kind of defenseman that would really help the Leafs because on most teams he would be a bottom pair guy. On the Leafs he could be like the number 4 and could provide just some steady defense and they need and a little bit of puck movement. He's not a great skater, but he's good enough.
Right. Well, and I'll just add this, and then we'll go on to the next subject, which I'm going to rely on you to bring up. At the morning skate, talking to a few people, and Brian Burke's comments before the game, after the morning skate, he was critical of Morgan Riley, looking for more effort out of him, more, to be the number 1 defenseman that they need him to be, not only with the puck, but without the puck. And for some of the younger defensemen or the guys who are supposed to be 4, 5, 6 in their lineup to, carve out their niche, find themselves, take that spot and keep it. But he went out of his way to be very effusive in his praise to Jake Gardiner, who leads the team in defensive scoring with 4 goals, and his analytics numbers are good. But in talking to a few people, Gardiner has been matched up a lot against 3rd and 4th lines. He's been getting more power play time, almost like they're pumping up his value.
Maybe.
And the thing is, I know nothing other than this is guesswork.
Yeah.
Gardner was a draft pick of the Burke era. I believe he was drafted in the draft just after Burke had gone to Toronto. So they obviously had scouted him while he was there, and then Burke traded for him in the Boschman deal in 2011, I believe it was. So he has a lot, and I'm sure Burke has input on players when it comes to that organization. So if there is a situation where you've got the organization like Calgary, who has added $17 million in free agents and extensions with Goudreau, with Monahan, and with Troy Brouwer, they're losing $5 million, a little over $5 million, with the Dennis Weidman becoming a UFA at the end of the year. But they have Hamilton locked up for another 4 years after this year at 5.75, and things apparently have not been working there with him. Not like he hasn't played well with Giordano.
He was fine last night.
I talked to someone in Calgary and said it's sort of like what happened with Jay Bouwmeester there. It's like he's talented, but he doesn't seem to really fit with anybody. And if they're paying that type of guy that kind of money and he's not fitting, that maybe they move him out for somebody who might fit and jettison some salary as well. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
Happened, but it's curious, and they are obviously looking at each other, so we'll see what happens.
Anything's possible. The one last thing I'll say is hopefully they're not pushing truculence on that team, because an alarming thing that I saw in that game was Calgary just sort of picking fights, getting chippy when the score was 4-1, and it's like, really? Is this, they started off the 3rd period after a horrible 2nd period being down by a lot of goals in the penalty box. That is a bad sign.
Yeah, a couple more notes here. Florida Panthers president and CEO Matthew Caldwell says management was unhappy with team's inconsistent performance at 20-game mark. So, they thought that they were going to be better. I mean,
it's their prerogative. It is.
Yeah, I mean, but Huberdeau being injured, and you know, you have Barkov getting off to a slow start. Those have to be contributing factors. But I don't think that they would have made this move unless they had it in their mind already. So,
well, I mean, we don't know. I mean, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. You know, again, we can't be dismissive of Yager regardless of his age. He's got 11 points in 22 games. You know, they're paying him $3.5 million. They probably would like a little better result from him too, even at that age.
In injury news, Vancouver defenseman Alex Edler will undergo surgery today for a fractured index finger. So this is another finger injury. He's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. This is on top of Goudreau, who had a broken pinky, I believe, and he's out. I think it was 6 to 8.
Yeah,
which is, you know, so there was a string of injuries. Brendan Smith for the Wings, Tyler Bertuzzi, and I have to say this because I said this after the Montreal-Toronto game, and I know since I'm an observer, you know, somebody who may be a little bit biased when it comes to Toronto, Alexei Emelin is just a real worm. He just play. I normally like players who play a rough and tumble game. I like guys who get it underneath people's skin. He's a cheap shot artist, and
he is.
He's got a list of walking wounded right now this year. You know, man, Riemsdyk didn't get hurt by the check from behind, but I believe he was the one who knocked Bertuzzi into the boards. I think he was the one who knocked down Brendan Smith. So he just, and I don't know, it's that type of guy, like an Ulf Samuelsson. Don't expect a lot of fans to cry if somebody enacts some retribution on him.
I agree. I mean, he is that guy. I mean, look, you like him if he's on your team, or you put up with him if he's on your team. You don't otherwise. So it is what it is with him. I don't know. So am I supposed to play Karnak with you? Am I supposed to just bring up Jack Capuano and that's the subject you want to talk about? Like, I don't know.
No, go ahead.
I mean, it's just a weird, it's a weird thing that's going on because I can't tell you now with absolute certainty that he's going to get fired. I can't, because there's been plenty of opportunity here, and I don't know how much more you need to see as far as what could be the breaking point or not. And so, like, is this going to be it? I don't know. If they lose tonight, will this be it for Jack? I don't know. I mean, we think he's in real trouble here. But it's possible, though, that they wait the entire season and just completely clean house before the draft, which is never a great thing to do. But if you have to do it, you have to do it.
Well,
and that would include Garth Snow, too. You kind of wonder, like, is that where they're at? I don't know, but they're playing Calgary tonight off a back-to-back, and Calgary had no legs at all yesterday. If Calgary somehow wins this game, this could be the one. It could be, and I think Mark Jankowski is going to make his debut tonight, which is a shame because I was hoping he'd make it yesterday so I could see him, but it didn't happen. I'll watch this game tonight, though, to see how he does. But, yeah, is this going to be it? Like, is it, if Calgary is the one that, let's say Calgary wins 4-2 or wins it late again with another late collapse, will that be the final straw? I'd like to be able to tell you with all certainty, yes, but there's a little bit of me that says, I don't know.
Well, Capuano has had a bit of Teflon.
Yeah.
It appears, from the statements that Garth Snow has made throughout, the beginning of this year, where they've really struggled, and he's stuck to Capuano completely. Maybe they've been told by ownership, maybe Snow has been told, this is your guy. You're going to sink or swim with him. And if that's the case, then he has really no other choice but to stick with him and to, hope that things turn around. All I know is that with Arizona winning back-to-back against Edmonton, one in Arizona, and then the next, I believe, was a home and home. They're at 18 points, and the Islanders are 30th overall. They're last in the league with a record of, I believe, it was 6-10-1.
We'll talk about Arizona in a minute because I have some things to say about them. But here's the part that really got, and I'm on New York radio once a week, Sunday nights, WLIE. And so we talked about Jack Capuano, right? Because the other day he said, for whatever reason, the hockey gods aren't on our side, acting as if the hockey god thing is real. And that has sort of angered the fan base because at this point, you are looking for real, like, analytical look at your team. You are looking for real reasons as to why your team is not doing well. As a fan, you're hoping the coach will at least say, we could do better with this. We're going to try that. None of that happened. He just blamed it on the hockey gods. And that's a bad thing to do.
There's got to be a happy medium. Someone like me is not happy with this all-in, buy-in that Florida is doing in terms of analytics. They're basically hockey Moneyball. They're
Right.
you know, they're running that franchise now with an abacus.
Mhm.
The Islanders, based on what you're saying, and there's no reason not to believe this, is that they're old school. They're, like you said, buying into the hockey gods, buying into luck, and there's a medium there where analytics can provide some perspective, but not everything.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I thought the Capuano was going to be the first one to drop. It seems like there's a bit of Teflon there, that there's a little resistance to firing him. Maybe the new ownership doesn't want to bring in somebody on an interim basis with Snow as the general manager. Maybe they're going to just play out the year, see where things are, and if they make the playoffs and succeed, great. If they don't, then they just chop the head off the snake and then go in a completely different direction. But I mean, this is a team that everybody thought was going to make the playoffs, and you've got, Tavares basically on an island. The goaltending has been okay, but not great. They've had some injuries, and they made bad moves over the summer. And Garth Snow has a bit in this because, Opozo and Nielsen going and replacing them with Andrew Ladd has not been a good move. So I think there's enough blame to go around, and we've said that a couple times. But I'm starting to think now that there is going to be no scapegoat, and that it's going to play out.
Yeah, it's very possible. Let's switch to Arizona for a minute because, again, we go back to Florida, and they literally just handed over Lawson Krause because of they wanted to bury money. And that's great. And Krause, he's not really lighting it up. He's only got one goal, but he's played in 16 games, right? So he's still up with the team. And so he's going to be there for a good long time. We'll find out what kind of player Lawson Krause will be. And I think he'll be a pretty good player. But you gave him a player. You gave him a player that could start this year, that maybe could have even helped your team that's now you're not in love with. And so there's that to contend with. Then the Tampa Bay Lightning inexplicably trade Anthony DeAngelo for a draft pick. Don't know why. Never heard a reason. I forget what the pick was. Let's see.
It was number 2.
Okay. So they trade a second-round pick for a guy they drafted in the first round. So right there's a loss. Like, you're already taking a loss, right? Well, the bigger loss is he's now got 6 points in his first 9 games for the Coyotes, and now Mark Stone doesn't look like he has a job because I always told people Anthony DeAngelo has elite skating skills and unbelievable puck skills and passing ability. And so, again, Michael Stone. There's too many Stones. Mark Stone's in Ottawa. But again, this is a guy, 6 points in his first 9 NHL games. You gave him away for a second-round pick, and you drafted him in the first round. So you lost assets all along the board. And look, we give Steve Yzerman a lot of credit, but this is one where they really just got killed. Good for Arizona. They picked up players.
Unless they didn't have the confidence that I watched a bit of DeAngelo playing against Edmonton on Friday night after checking out some OHL action. And, DeAngelo, he made a couple defensive errors. So, that's to be expected from.
But he's a plus player right now. He's a +1.
It's expected from a young defenseman.
Yeah.
And he's going to learn from his mistakes. But, we know the type of system that Cooper runs. And if you're not a Cooperite, you're out. And, that sometimes it doesn't make any sense because a guy like Corey Conacher gets 3 or 4 chances, but there's resistance that give, and now Jonathan Drouin is, he's playing and he's playing well because he's that kind of talent. But there was some resistance there regarding Drouin because he wasn't buying into what Cooper was doing. So sometimes talent does not overcome what the system.
True. But I had to point out this D'Angelo thing because, this is a coup for the Arizona Coyotes. Like, he's having a huge impact, and I kind of knew he would. I still think Krause will have some sort of impact, but it's going to take a little while for him because he's a different kind of player, and the bigger players like that don't always score right away. Although Matthew Tkachuk had a greasy goal in the crease yesterday that was fantastic, and he is really it's hard to say this, but I think he's exceeding expectations right now, Tkachuk, because I thought he was sort of like a tweener to play in the NHL this year, and he looks really good. And so I'm happy for him too. But D'Angelo, that's a heck of a pick. And if he keeps scoring, he might get in the Calder race. Like, there's there's a lot of guys this year, man.
Well, and the thing is, I think Arizona, John Chaika and Dave Tippett are set up. I mean, I don't think a lot of people expect that team to be competitive in terms of making a playoff spot. It's possible, but I don't think it's likely. But they have some free agents, and if D'Angelo is part of their top 6 and Stone is not playing, Stone is a UFA. There's a lot of teams out there that need defense. Maybe he would be shopped. He's his price tag is $4 million, but the Coyotes had the ability to retain salary to bring assets back like they did in the Yandle deal. So, and they have Martin Hansel, who I'm sure will be sought after in terms of a big forward as a rental for a number of teams. So they can make some moves where they can either add futures or add prospects. But the thing is, at some point, that organization has got to stop with the prospects and the picks and settle on a group and grow that group. And right now, it just seems that they're in this perpetual, let's trade off these guys, bring in some young guys, and keep building. But eventually, you got to get there.
Yeah, no, I agree. You do have to eventually get there. But at the end of the day, right now, things are shaping up for them. And I like the things they've done.
Now, Ack wrote today about his 15 top rentals in the upcoming trade market. He put a few of them down just to talk about them. Number 15 on the list was Ben Bishop. We've talked about Bishop as a potential trade. Russ, I mean, and I'm in the minority here. I think they're keeping Bishop. I think they're a Stanley Cup contender. If Vasilevsky goes down, maybe you take the risk. You have Gudlevskis as your number 2. He could fill in a pinch, but I think you've had Bishop there. The salary isn't killing you. The Stamkos placement on LTIR buys you the cap room, so you don't need to jettison Bishop for cap space. If you
want. And you could trade him at the draft for a 2nd, 3rd round pick. You can.
Right.
You can trade the rights to him in case somebody wants to negotiate with him before he becomes a UFA. You might be able to peddle that, even if it's for any pick, a 5th round pick, whatever. But they're not getting rid of him. I agree with you.
Right. I mean, and there are teams out there that need goaltending. Yeah. But does Tampa want to trade an expiring contract in Ben Bishop to a team like Dallas, who we know is looking for goaltending, and would have to give back a Niemi or a Lettinen, who have, I believe, another 1 or 2 years left on their deals? I don't think Yzerman wants to take something that would kill their cap. So I think Bishop is staying. Number 14 on the list was Cal Clutterbuck, who, he's a very useful guy. But if you noticed, that 4th line unit, it was Cizikas, it was Matt Martin, and Clutterbuck, and they were a tough, matchup for any 4th line. And they've moved, they re-signed Cizikas, and now he's not exactly cost effective at over $3 million a year. And they've put Nikolai Kuhlman, the former Leaf, on that 4th line. That line has not been as effective. Clutterbuck is making $2.75. That's the perfect ad for a team like a Chicago, a guy who can just go out there and work his butt off and hit and create. And a team like that, a team like Montreal maybe, who has the reputation of collecting guys like this right now. It's Shaw and Gallagher. This would be one more guy who would just be a pain in the ass.
And he scores. He scores a bit. I mean, yeah, I think. But again, boy, then we're going to go back to where the Islanders traded for Clutterbuck, and has that really worked out for them?
No, Niederreiter's been a pretty effective player with Minnesota. So
Yeah.
they gave up a guy who was drafted in the top 5, who didn't get along with the organization, with Snow, with Capuano,
Right.
and they jettisoned him, and they bring in Clutterbuck, and now Clutterbuck, who could walk away for nothing in free agency or cost them more, and maybe him being on the market might be an indication they're not going to spend, try to sign him for $3 million or more.
Right.
Another guy on the fourth line, so maybe he goes somewhere. Number 13 on the list, I just had it up, and of course, here we go, was Derek England of the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, I looked at him yesterday. I was thinking, would the Leafs want England? But I think the age is the factor there. They wouldn't. But somebody will for a cup run.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm chewing ice.
Because he has truculence.
Yeah, he has truculence, but I just don't know how good he is. I mean,
you know what though? But here's the thing. You're always going to have injuries occur in the Stanley Cup run, and even a guy like him can come in and push people out of the crease. That's it.
And he has the ability to play forward and defense. He could fit in a fourth line forward role, and he could play on the blue line. So that versatility might be somebody.
Somebody will take him.
Somebody will take him. Number 12 is Cody Franzen, and boy, how the mighty hath fallen. Cody Franzen. He's going to get a 5-year deal for $5 million per. He's traded for a first-round pick. He signs a 2-year deal with Buffalo, and now, he's been, he might be a rental option, which he was 2 years ago. But thing is, Cody Franzen is one of those weird type of guys. He's a right-hand shot defenseman. In terms of 5-on-5, he's a bottom pairing guy.
Oh yeah.
But his shot and his ability on the power play make him valuable. I mean, I think he's a first power play guy with a lot of teams because he gets the puck to the net. But defensively, you've got to hide him, even though he's a big guy and he sometimes will hit. He's just defensively not very good.
Only way a Stanley Cup team takes him is if they have an injury. That's it. They have to be a little desperate because of what he doesn't do on the defensive end, because you don't want him on the ice in a big situation. That's the problem. But you might want his offense in case you lost a guy on the power play. So, that'll be the thing for him. But again, his career has really taken a turn. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and look, the team that took him as a rental was a team that knew him inside and out in Nashville, the team that he was with before. And they gave him a first-round pick for him and Mike Santorelli. And they got, they took a nosedive as soon as they made that trade. Not to say that those guys were responsible, but it just didn't work out for them. Number 11 on the list is Mark.
Although it's working out for my cat, Allie, because she's getting a lot of pets right now.
There you go.
You can see the tail.
You sucker. You said you weren't going to adopt any cats, and you adopted cats.
I know.
Number 11 is Mark Streit. Now, you've seen Streit a lot with the Flyers, obviously. The salary will be tough. He's over $5 million, but he's still playing well. And if there's a team that needs offense,
He's still got a great shot. We were remarking it yesterday. The shot's still there. The skating's just hanging on by a thread, but he knows how to get into the offense. He knows how to bring the puck up the ice, too. He's a guy that can get the puck into the offensive zone all on his own. He knows how to do that.
Now, here's the thing, and this is, sometimes past associations mean something. Sometimes they mean nothing at all. The management has completely changed from when he was in Montreal, but Montreal is looking for defense.
Yeah.
And, he's a weapon on the power play. He can still play 20 minutes a night. To me, and I don't think it would cost Montreal a ton to get Streit out of Philadelphia. It may cost him a prospect, but I don't think it's going to cost him like multiple draft picks or things like that.
No.
So that might be a fit.
I think it could be.
Last on his list was David Desharnais, who has underachieved dramatically with the Canadiens this year. It seems, Russ, that with the move of Galchenyuk up the middle, Desharnais' role has dramatically decreased, and he hasn't been.
But he was never going to be the offensive player that Galchenyuk is anyhow.
No. But I think once he became basically the third line center, which is traditionally a more checking role, And then that's, I don't think he's in a checking role. He doesn't have the size to be a checking center. I think that Galchenyuk has taken up that mantle offensively, and Desharnais, I don't see where he fits with their scheme up the middle. I
don't think he's going to garner that much attention. I don't.
Well, it's a question of how much you'll get for him. I mean, he's in his mid-20s, and I'm trying to see what his salary amount is. I think it's in the $3 million range. So if it's that, he might, somebody who needs some help up the middle. $3.5 million, and he's a UFA, obviously, at the end of the year. The Canadians are, they're going to re-sign Galchenyuk as an RFA. He's probably going to make $5 to $6 million on a new long-term deal. And Plekanec has one more year left in his contract, so you might trade Plekanec to.
They're not going to trade Plekanec. They're not.
Yeah, but they have a lot of they have to sign Plekanec. They have to sign Galchenyuk.
I know, but he might come back pretty cheap at this point. Like, he just likes it there. They like him. I think he might come back cheap. I'll give you a name that I didn't hear you say was on the list. Is Ryan Strome on the list?
No, but he hasn't released the entire list. It was just the bottom of 5.
Well, he should be, because I look at that situation. I see the way the play has dipped, and if everything's going to stay in place right now, let's say Capuano nothing happens to his job, nothing happens to Garth Snow, well, then you know what? I could see Ryan Strome getting traded. And because they have to do something to shake up the offense. They just they don't have enough scoring. And Strome does have a lot of ability, and there's got to be a team out there that would want a skilled guy like that who skates well. He's not the best skater in the world, but he's good. He's a good skater. But he does have great stick and puck skills. He does. And he is just woefully stuck in the mud there.
I keep going back to Arizona. It makes sense to put the brothers together.
Yeah. And they have assets.
And that would be a deal that would probably be beneficial to both teams. Change of scenery for Strome. The Islanders get some sort of prospect back. One further bit of news before we end the show. The waivers today, the Edmonton Oilers placed Mark Fane on waivers. Just another one of these signings that Edmonton made over the last few years on defense, where they spent way too much money. The Andrew Ference contract, he's been injured the last couple of years, but it made no sense at all signing him for what they signed him for. And Mark Fane was brought in at $3.6 million. After one good year with the New Jersey Devils. I didn't get it. I still don't. And that's one of the reasons why they've had a complete managerial changeover in Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean, boy, Mark Fane. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's going to want him. I guess somebody who is just desperate for another defenseman will take a flyer on him and maybe claim him, but I don't know.
There was conspicuous retiring over the weekend. Matt Carl, who had played, I think, 7 games with the Predators, was unconditionally waived and then announced his retirement after getting bought out from Tampa last year. He hooked on with Nashville for a 1-year contract, and everybody thought that he was basically going to be the replacement for Barrett Jackman as that bottom 6, sort of veteran guy who would play off and on. And, there was nothing left in the tank for Matt Carl.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I happen to like Matt Carl personally. I think Chris Pronger helped prop up his career more than maybe it was going to be. I think he always had skating ability and puck moving ability, but then with Pronger, he was allowed to really roam around and got a lot of points. But he did have some nice years for Philly. There's no question about it. I really like the guy. I think he was good with the Sharks too. I do. Mm-hmm. End of the day, he had a good career. He's got nothing to hang his head about. I wish nothing but good things for him. I will say this about Edmonton. It's interesting because they are only a 5-5 team at home. It's a little worrisome because right now, even though they're first in the Pacific at 26 points, Anaheim is only 2 points behind them for the wild card if they slip out of the top 3 spots. And Nashville is only 3 points behind them too. So it's not like they have this great lead. Why are they only 5-5 at home?
It's funny because it should be the opposite. I mean, you look at what Toronto is doing right now. The victory against Washington on Saturday, it was their 8th win at home in 11 games. So
Right.
8-3 at home. On the road, they're 1-5-4. They've won one game all year, and it was in the den of losing, Buffalo, where they always lose, that they have won their only game on the road in regulation. So that is more prototypical in terms of your young team has trouble winning on the road. And Toronto, either they score 4 goals and give up 5, or they score none and 1 and give up 1 or 2.
And they are the worst team in the West in their last 10. They are 3-6-1 in their last 10. That is worst in the West. So you do kind of wonder. Even Winnipeg's been better than that. Even Colorado's been better than that. Arizona's been better than that. Vancouver's been better than that. So they are slipping a little bit.
And Winnipeg has dropped off precipitously. All of a sudden, I mean, Laine is still, I believe he's tied, or he might be, I think he's tied with Mitch Marner right now for rookie scoring. But, I mean, he wasn't going to keep going at a 60-goal pace for the entire year. You knew that there would, at one point, be something that would slow him down. And right now he's slowing down a little bit. He's still having a very impressive year.
By the way, worst team in the NHL in goal differential is the Calgary Flames, -19.
Yeah,
already.
Yep, and when you're spending the kind of money that they're spending on defense and you're -19, maybe there's not too much concern about trading a defenseman. Maybe they just think we don't have the defense right now and we may as well shake things up. So maybe there is some method in the potential of them trading a guy like a Hamilton. I don't know how much trading a Dennis Weidman would affect them, but
yeah, I don't know. But I will say this: there's always anomalies. Right now, the Dallas Stars are a pretty good anomaly because they're -15, but they're technically tied. They're 1 game behind, let's say, for Nashville for that last wild card spot, and that just means, and it's probably because of their home record. They're 6-3-2 at home, and so they've probably won big at home and lost big on the road. It's one or the other, right? But some probably just lost big on the road, and so somehow they're keeping it going. But it is interesting when you look at the teams with the bad minus differential. Most times you can't come out of that. Like most times, the best case scenario is the Stars, and they're -13. The Islanders are -14, and they're in the bottom in the East, and that's simply because I think the East is a little better than the West this year. I do.
All right, Russ, good show. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. I believe we'll have a few extra friends of ours on the show, but we'll make sure that we let everybody know who will be on the show tomorrow. But for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.